you don't tell the story of your company, others will. So there might be people opposed to your development. There might be people opposed to your line of work. 30 years ago, I was a woman in my 20s who was starting a business, and I was very cautious about taking risks. But if I knew then what I know now, that would have been easier to be just a little bolder.
Welcome to today's episode of the Sask Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have Mary-Lynn Charlton, who is the president and CEO of Martin Charlton Communications. Mary-Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and it's great to have half an hour to chat with you.
That's wonderful. So, Mary-Lynn, I was going through your profile, and you have a vast experience. I mean, you've been in business for over 30 years. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory?
I started in media as a newspaper reporter and photographer, and realized quite quickly that I didn't want that kind of role. I went back to school and I studied, after studying journalism first, then I went back to school and took broader film, video, and communications work. I was lucky enough to get a postgraduate year at New York University, where I was able to do internships and also take some classes there to get a really broad scope on all aspects of communication, really. And after that, I went into government, and I had the good fortune of working in the legislature for a cabinet minister. And I say good fortune because it was a job that just challenged me in all kinds of ways. And I developed all kinds of skills that are valuable today in our business. So I did that for a few years. I left I left just over 30 years ago and set up Charlton Communications, which I had for a number of years. And then 13 years ago, I merged with Paul Martin Communications, and many people know who Paul Martin is because he's on the radio. We always say Paul Martin on the radio. And we formed Martin Charlton Communications. So that was the joining together of Charlton Communications and Paul Martin Communications. And that's turned out to be a wonderful marriage, the two companies. So we're really, really happy with the way that's gone. We're the largest public relations communications company in Saskatchewan and one of the largest on the prairies. And we work with anyone that's doing work kind of on the prairies. So, we have clients that aren't located on this continent. They're in another area of the world, but they do business here. We also have national clients. We have provincial clients. We have local clients. We have for-profit, non-for-profit, not-for-profit. And we also have some governments of all levels. We do work with municipal government, a little bit with provincial government, and a little bit sometimes with federal agencies So that gives you a little bit of background, I think, on my background and how we've gotten to this point where we are today.
That's great. I mean, I always admire businesses that have been, operating for such a long period of time. And it's a tough industry. You get to go through many highs and lows over the years. So can you maybe describe, obviously you have been dealing with clients outside of Saskatchewan as well, but what is it that you love about doing business in Saskatchewan?
Oh, that's a great question. We love Saskatchewan. We love the prairies. All of us, I think, at the company have worked elsewhere and traveled, and we really have a love for the prairies. You asked the highs and lows. I think the high of being in business in this geographic area and being in business for a long time is we've kind of seen it all. So when a client comes to us and says, "Here's what I need to do," usually we're solving a problem for a client. That's how we like to think of it. So they'll come and say, "Here's the issue that I have. Here's the problem that I need solved." Chances are we've already seen it before. maybe not in today's context or in tomorrow's context, but we just have experience and we know this geographic area. So we understand the agriculture background. We've worked a lot in agriculture. We understand that. We've worked a lot with all the new industries that are coming up. We know a lot of the players. We know a lot of the entrepreneurs. So I think that's the high. The low, I have to say, is when this part of the country hasn't done well. And I think about the 90s, the mid 90s, for example. I remember doing my year end in the mid 90s and taking a look at my year, looking back on my year, and we had very little revenue that came from Saskatchewan because the economy was dead. There was nothing going on. So we had to generate our work from outside. And I don't even mean people that were doing work in Saskatchewan. I mean, things just weren't happening here. We saw a turnaround about 13 years ago. And then it's, now who wouldn't want to be in Saskatchewan? Companies like yours, a lot of younger companies, younger than us. It's just fantastic. We've got an economy that's doing well. My partner, Paul, likes to say we're in 7-year cycles, and he would say we're at the beginning of another great 7-year cycle, and we're feeling it here. The commodity prices are up. There's lots going on. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but the low is when this economy hasn't done well. And I have to say, we felt it during COVID. We've been on a great streak for really since our merger 13 years ago. But then COVID did slow everything down. And communications is often one of the first things. Communications, public affairs, government relations, all of that stuff often gets pulled back when companies have uncertainty or they don't know what's going to happen. And that makes sense to most people. They say, well, that's not essential. I'd rather cut back on that than get rid of some employees. So COVID was a bit of a step back for us and for many people. But we're really feeling the economy pick up now, and people making investments and people wanting to move forward. So we couldn't be more excited about the economy of Saskatchewan.
So what's your thought when it comes to companies backing down on communication? Because I think, from my perspective, it seems that it should be emphasized during that phase because, they're going through a lot of changes. They have to adapt to new circumstances, and they have to tread very carefully as far as what they're communicating to their employees, to the public. So what's your take on that?
You hit the nail on the head. I'm just going to give you an example. We have a company that cut back, and our provincial government made a move that seriously is going to impair the revenues of this particular company. And they came back to us running and said, oh my God, like the little bit of money we've saved by cutting back, we're being seriously impacted by this government decision. So we need you to get to work and help us overcome that. The other thing is reputation management. People cut back. You mentioned employees, and I'll get to that in a second, but people cut back, and the motto of our company is we tell your stories. So you'll hear me refer to that, but they cut back on telling their stories. And then what happens is if you don't tell the story of your company and you don't tell the story about what you're doing and why, of course, why is the important thing. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you're going to build a mine or you're going to expand or whatever it is that you want, you have to make sure everyone understands why you're doing it. And if you don't tell people why, others will. So there might be people opposed to your development. There might be people opposed to your line of work. Or just opposed to, what they understand your motives to be. If you haven't told your story and communicated what you're doing, other people will fill the void and tell your story for you. And then you have to play catch up. And it's twice as hard, takes twice as much time to play catch up as it does to just consistently, accurately, and transparently tell your story all the way along. So you never know where the threat's going to come. It might come from others telling your story. It might come from government or any regulatory agency that says, hey, we're going to make a decision because we have no knowledge of how that impacts you. And then you also hit on employees. If you're not communicating with your employees, I don't need to tell you how hard it is to find employees right now. We're into a market, and it's only going to get worse over the next little while. So making sure you have proper engagement, making sure that you are talking about the culture of the company to your employees. This is who we are. This is what we're all about. There's a transparency, and I come back to the word motive. That's a word that I like to use, making sure everybody understands what your motive is, because if people become suspicious of your motive, whether it's an external audience or an internal audience, you can get yourself in trouble. So, if you cut back on communications, it can end up costing you more, and it can take you a really long time to overcome what has happened.
So it seems that, obviously during the initial stages of the pandemic, I think there was a lot of panic mode, right? A lot of companies and organizations, they didn't really know what to expect. And I think due to that fear, they took actions that did more harm than good in terms of, laying everyone off and cutting back on communications. I know in our industry, we noticed quite a bit of cutback in marketing as well. There were companies that were really laying off their marketing teams. But, we looked at it as an opportunity where, we dealt with companies that invested in marketing and those that actually cut back on marketing, and the companies that actually invested in marketing ended up gaining significant market share when everyone was pulling back. So it was a different mindset, and those that were willing to take the risk, they were able to essentially make 3 years of progress in 3 months. Did you notice that in your industry at all, like in terms of communications?
One thing that happened right off the bat with the pandemic, everybody cut back. And,
Yes.
It's hard to be critical because what the heck was this? There's no playbook. We didn't know what was going to happen. One thing we noticed after a bit is people I use the word introspective. They started to look at, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Are we effective at doing it? And so we have a service called Communication Audit. And, we were doing a few a year. All of a sudden, we went crazy with requests to do audits. And it was small, medium, and large organizations that said, hey, we know this pandemic will come to an end. After that initial, I'm going to say 6 to 10 months of total uncertainty, it was like, okay, the world is not going to end. We will come out of this. But this is a chance for us to be prepared. So we did communications. We're still doing communication audits for organizations. And as the pandemic is ending, they are there, as you have just said, use marketing, but organizations that also did this work, they're ahead of other organizations because they have a plan. Because what comes after an audit is to put together a plan, communication strategy, communication plan, work plan, whatever terminology you want to use. So they know, and they're putting all that together right now. And whereas people that sat back and panicked, and there's still people panicking. I'm sure in your world you see that too. There's a paralyzing thing that happened and maybe is still happening. So yeah, there are people that are now, ready to go. And like I said earlier, I really feel like the economy is taking off. So if you're ready to go and you're positioned, let's go, because this economy is going to be a great economy over the next however many years.
That's true. And I think the companies that are actually prepared for that, they can, hit the ground running. They can really take advantage of this opportunity. And there was this phrase that was being, used quite actively during the pandemic, which is, many businesses have pivoted, right? Basically, the idea was that they shifted their business models, or they made rapid changes in their businesses to be able to adapt to new new consumer behaviors. And for many businesses, it actually had a huge impact in terms of growth, in terms of the positivity that they experienced. But in other cases, those businesses that tend to stay behind and hold back, they just were hoping that things would get better, but hope is not a strategy. So
yeah, that's true. One thing that we've seen, we've been trying to sell this for a long time. If you're an organization, are you sure you need to have an in-house full-time communications marketing person, or can you contract out? And we can make the economic case that contracting out saves you money. If you have someone in-house, they're a jack of all trades and a specialist in none. You take that same amount of money, you contract out. And we have a digital specialist. We have a very skilled writer. We have strategists. So we give the right person to the right task. Prior to COVID, we were having medium success with that concept. But coming out of COVID, again, I think there was COVID was a chance for people to say, why are we doing things the way we're doing? Is there a way to do things differently? And then on top of that, we have a labor shortage. So, so another interesting thing we're seeing is organizations that I've talked to, maybe annually for a few years, are now saying, yeah, we want to talk about contracting out. It makes more sense to, or maybe we want to have one person in-house who's, I'll use the word quarterback to use a football analogy. But we're going to utilize specialists to do these things. So they are doing things differently. And I see, I got to say, just in the last 2 months, I see quite a willingness among organizations. And I'm not just talking young, agile organizations. I'm talking about old, staid kind of groups that are starting to say, yeah, there is a different way of doing things, and we can probably do a better job at all of our communications, marketing, those kinds of things, and not spend more and do a better job. So that's a good side of COVID. I mean, I hate to say there's a good side to COVID because, of course, there's lots of tragedy and bleakness attached to it. But I talked about the communications audit, but it's just generally an opportunity for people to say, we did it ourselves. I bet you did it in your organization as well. Let's question why we're doing things the way we're doing and how can we do it differently. Another thing, we have organizations that are willing to say, what is this whole digital marketing world and how can we participate in that? How can you help us tell our story on digital platforms? Of course, a lot of that just would have happened with evolution, but I do attribute COVID to some of that, where people are just using it as an opportunity to shake things up and do things differently. And I'm sure in your business, you're seeing that as well.
Absolutely. We've experienced that as well. And I think, before COVID, it was tough for companies to really work with outsourced marketing teams, so to speak. And the fact is that, when we work with clients, we have specialized skill sets in areas of design, development, and digital marketing. So when we work with clients, we can actually help them obviously work on the concept as well as creation of the idea, and then ultimately promotion of the idea afterwards as well. And we can help them go through those phases in a very, very efficient manner, rather than them trying to hire the resources to be able to go from concept to creation and then finally promotion. So it's a gap that we are able to address for our clients. And what we're noticing is that clients are actually now much more open to having those discussions with us as to how can we be their in-house digital marketing team.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting transition, and I think it's great for business. From a business perspective, it makes more sense to go that route, rather than hiring a whole bunch of people, trying to train them and trying to get them to the level. And again, it depends on your vision and so forth, and what size and scale you want to be at. But I think there's definitely a position for working with specialized companies to help address those gaps that companies that other businesses are facing right now.
Yeah. And as you and I have discussed prior to today, a company like yours and ours working together as well, we have always, for over 30 years, we've had the view that we like to have partners out there that complement our skills. And your company is certainly one that we're really happy to work with, recommend, and be working with on an ongoing basis. Some of that is evolution, some of that's just happening, but I do think COVID has pushed some of that to the forefront.
I appreciate that, and I think one aspect that I will mention is that in the past year and a half or so, I've had the opportunity to have these discussions and deep conversations about what makes their business a success. And there's a few key rules that helps businesses overcome challenges successfully as well as grow. And one of those is proactive communication, which is a key role that you help companies with as well. Those companies, those entrepreneurs that actually focus on proactive communication, whether it's within their business or outside their business, they're really taking advantage of being able to present themselves in the best manner. And I think that those companies that do that often do leverage opportunities more than others. So it is one of the key aspects that I find is adds to the success of the company for sure. So with regards to your business, I mean, where do you see, or maybe some of you mentioned that, the 7-year cycles, and that's quite interesting. So where do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for your business in the near future?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think without talking about sectors of the economy, which I can talk about, but I think it is I'm sure you feel the same way. I think it's the labor shortage. So, in a way, it's good to have a labor shortage. That means that people can get jobs, and people have good jobs, and people with lower paying jobs are moving up the ladder, and that's always a good news. But it's good news for us too, in that I think people are willing to contract out. You don't have to have just because in the year 2009 you had someone in the office down the hall doing the job. You can do things differently now in this decade, and you can contract out. So certainly the labor shortage. The other opportunity for us is as investment increases in the province, we have players coming from out of province, and that's a great opportunity for a company like mine because we help them communicate in Saskatchewan. There's a certain way, and I'm told this all the time by companies. It's not just me telling them, they tell me that you have to know how to operate in Saskatchewan. You have to know how to talk to the government. You have to know how to talk to stakeholders, whether the stakeholders are other governments, other municipalities, whatever it might be. So as we have new players coming into Saskatchewan, we certainly have opportunities to work with new players. And just increased activity. As there's more and more investment, there's more natural resource projects, there's more agriculture projects. Just last night or night before last, I was at a presentation of a really exciting Saskatoon company in the ag tech side. I mean, there's just so much that's going on, and we're just on the edge of so much exciting stuff happening. We have what the world wants. I mean, everyone says that, but you're just reminded of that on a daily basis. The ag tech, the food, the fuel, the fertilizer. So, I feel fortunate that I've been able to be in business for this long because I've seen the evolution of the economy, and sometimes it's hard to believe, and we take it for granted. But I remember when people weren't sure about growth. Are we sure we really want to grow the province? We like this quiet little province that we have. And so I'm just so grateful that I've had kind of a front row seat working with some of the clients I've worked with over the years that have built mines and have invested in this province and have done mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of things. It's just I go back to think back to the 1980s. It was very revolutionary. Some of the stuff that was done in that decade that has allowed us to grow. I'm very grateful that I've been able to watch this, and I'm really excited for the next decade as well.
That's great. I mean, Saskatchewan has so much potential right now. And I think, from an ag side of things, as well as the tech side, there are so many opportunities, and it's a great time to start a business right now as well. So, so good to see that, things are picking up and businesses are coming back together and booming. So on more of a personal note, Mary-Lynn, if you were to go back to the earlier years of the business, I'm talking about 30 years back, what advice would you give to your younger self?
You warned me that question was coming, and I just didn't get that enough thought. You used the word risk earlier in this conversation, yes. And 30 years ago, I was a woman in my 20s who was starting a business, and there was lots of that was not easy for women. It's hard to believe nowadays, but and I was very cautious about taking risks. One of my first contracts, I did work for a company for a year, and after a year, the vice president, who was a woman, pulled me aside and she said, our president would feel better giving this work to a man that he goes to Rotary with. He's in the Rotary Club with this man who's a competitor of yours, and he just doesn't feel comfortable working with a woman. Well, I just accepted that and went on. That it's hard to believe, but that's kind of the way it was. And so I think I was shy about taking risks and really pushing the envelope because it was a different time, and particularly for a woman to be in business. I'm not that old, but it is a different world now. It is easier, and so it was a bit of a challenge for sure.
That is, that would have been a tough time. Obviously, you wouldn't come across a lot of women entrepreneurs back then. I mean, now obviously the times have changed quite a bit for the better, but back then it would have been very challenging, I would assume. And I'm sure you have more stories that that can relate to that.
Yeah, so it's hard to believe sometimes. I was just not very long ago. I was with friends from high school. We still get together, and one of them said to me, Mary-Lynn, it's so unusual that you took the career path that you did, because really, most women were still being teachers and nurses for the most part. I really hadn't thought of that. That didn't occur to me until she said that just a couple of months ago. If getting back to your original question, I think being a little bolder and taking risks, which is much easier for a woman now. But if I, everyone says this, but if I knew then what I know now, that would have been easier to be just a little bolder. And I was very accepting of things, like when this vice president pulled me aside and said, our president wants to work with his buddy in the Rotary Club. I just was accepting of that. You don't want to rock the boat, but I think I would have handled that differently if I knew then what I know now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's. It's interesting. I mean, it's good that the times have changed, but I feel that there's still awareness that is required in this area. I mean, I think that it's important for us to understand that there are some great women entrepreneurs, especially in Saskatchewan, and we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate the fact that there needs to be that opportunity, given to women, to minorities, and so forth. And my personal experience when I came here back in 1998. multiculturalism in Saskatchewan wasn't that common, right? So I started my company back in 2004, and it was tough. It was tough because, you get faced with certain stereotypes and so forth, and it can be quite challenging. So up to some extent, I can understand those barriers. I feel that, I think one of my greatest role models is my mom, who actually got herself out of very extreme poverty because, she chose to educate herself. She chose to go through the effort of building her skill set and getting out of some really difficult circumstances. And this is back about 40 years ago, but it was a really, really tough time back then as well. So I can understand up to some extent the pains that you've experienced.
I have to say, and I say this all the time here in the office, some of the most rewarding work we do is in the Indigenous community, and we're so fortunate to be working with some clients and one particular client, which is Indigenous entrepreneurs. And oh my God, it's the most rewarding thing. And when we, there's so much going on in the Indigenous entrepreneur business community, and there's such wisdom and great ability. And I say this all the time, when we do, that piece of work, we go home Friday night and know that, we have really helped someone who's making a difference. And as these Indigenous entrepreneurs are growing and becoming more widespread in all the activities that they're involved in, they employ more and more people. I mean, it's just, we just love that kind of work. But again, as you referenced, there were obstacles to overcome for sure.
Absolutely. So, Mary-Lynn, based on the experiences and the challenges that you've overcome, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to the entrepreneurs listening to this podcast, what would that be?
Persevere.
Yes.
Just stick it out. I'm sure you had to do that as well. Sometimes that means weekends, evenings. You just do what you have to do. And that's how all of us have grown our business. I think that's, there's no business around that wouldn't have done that. So you just got to stick it out. Sometimes you have to pick up a job and say, hey, I'll just do that myself and get that done. And so, yeah, it's just sticking with it and knowing that it ebbs and flows too, and being able to handle the fact that it ebbs and flows. So, I as I'm sure you did, in the first year or two, you sweat it if you could go down like this, and then you are on a really big high when you're up here, and then you sweat it when it goes down again. So
Yes.
it's just sticking it out and knowing that if there's a bad time, there's going to be a better time, and when there's a really busy time and you think, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? It'll all even out in the end. And it does. It just kind of all evens out in the end. And there's opportunities to grow. So knowing when to embrace those opportunities as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a turbulent journey, right? There's many, many ups and downs, but it's part of the entrepreneurial spirit to be able to deal with those ups and downs in a positive way.
Yeah.
It can be a challenge, but it's important to persevere for sure.
Yeah.
Mary-Lynn, it's been such an honor to actually have you on the show here today. Where can people learn more about yourself and find out about you online?
Visit our website, which is wetellyourstories.ca. That's the easiest place to start. So wetellyourstories.ca. And you can find information about us and contact us.
That's wonderful. We'll definitely include the links to your website as well as your profile in this podcast. And thank you so much once again to be on the show.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this, and you and I have met previously. I really enjoyed our conversations, and thank you so much. It's been great to chat with you.
Thanks for listening to Sask Entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a spark of inspiration. To catch more stories and lessons learned from Saskatchewan's business leaders, visit SaskEntrepreneurs.com. Until next time, Keep building, keep growing, and keep Saskatchewan strong. Ciao.